Welcome to the debate. Imagine you were standing at the edge of a deep chasm, looking at a rope bridge spanning the abyss.
Okay.
You can stand on the precipice and sincerely declare that you believe the bridge will hold your weight. You can shout your faith into the canyon. But from a strict behavioral standpoint, that belief is really just air moving across your vocal cords until you actually step onto the wood and walk across.
Right, until you take the action.
Exactly. So today, for all of you in our university audience studying religious ethics and behavioral philosophy, we are analyzing the architecture of obedience. The central question before us is this. In this architectural framework, is a sincere verbal profession of belief enough to secure one's standing, or is consistent, measurable action required to confirm true spiritual integrity?
And to keep our analysis surgically precise today, our entire discourse is going to operate under a strict source constraint. We are structuring this as a formal cross-examination between a theologian and a moral philosopher, relying exclusively on the text of Matthew chapter 7 from the King James Version.
Only the KJV today.
Right. And as a moral philosopher, my position is that because outward religious works are so easily counterfeited, the internal nature of the individual being a quote-unquote good tree is the true requirement for spiritual integrity, not merely outward action.
And as a theologian, I represent the position that consistent obedience and behavioral action, specifically doing the will of the Father, is the primary inescapable metric. Action is the actual foundation.
Well, before we dive into the arguments, we said we were going to ground the audience in the source text, right?
Yes, we are going to rapidly and dynamically read the entirety of Matthew 7, verses 1 through 29, just to get the whole context out there before the debate begins. I'll let you start us off.
Sounds good. Rapid fire, here we go. Judge not that ye be not judged. For with what judgment ye judge, ye shall be judged. And with what measure you mete, it shall be measured to you again. And why beholdest thou the mote that is in thy brother's eye, but considerest not the beam that is in thine own eye? Or how wilt thou say to thy brother, let me pull out the mote out of thine eye, and behold, a beam is in thine own eye? Thou hypocrite! First cast out the beam out of thine own eye, and then shalt thou see clearly to cast out the mote out of thy brother's eye.
Give not that which is holy unto the dogs, neither cast ye your pearls before swine, lest they trample them under their feet, and turn again and rend you. Ask, and it shall be given you. Seek, and ye shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened unto you.
For every one that asketh receiveth, and he that seeketh findeth, and to him that knocketh it shall be opened.
Right. Or what man is there of you, whom if his son ask bread, will he give him a stone? Or if he ask a fish, will he give him a serpent? If ye then, being evil, know how to give good gifts unto your children, how much more shall your Father which is in heaven give good things to them that ask him?
Therefore, all things whatsoever ye would that men should do to you, do ye even so to them, for this is the law and the prophets. Enter ye in at the strait gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the way, that leadeth to destruction, and many there be which go in thereat.
Because strait is the gate, and narrow is the way, which leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it.
Beware of false prophets, which come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravening wolves. Ye shall know them by their fruits.
Do men gather grapes of thorns, or figs of thistles? Even so every good tree bringeth forth good fruit, but a corrupt tree bringeth forth evil fruit. A good tree cannot bring forth evil fruit, neither can a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit.
Every tree that bringeth not forth good fruit is hewn down and cast into the fire. Wherefore by their fruits ye shall know them.
Not every one that saith unto me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will of my Father which is in heaven. Many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in thy name? And in thy name have cast out devils, and in thy name done many wonderful works?
Then will I profess unto them, I never knew you. Depart from me, ye that work iniquity.
Therefore whosoever heareth these sayings of mine, and doeth them, I will liken him unto a wise man which built his house upon a rock.
And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat upon that house. And it fell not, for it was founded upon a rock.
And every one that heareth these sayings of mine, and doeth them not, shall be likened unto a foolish man which built his house upon the sand.
And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat upon that house. And it fell, and great was the fall of it.
And it came to pass, when Jesus had ended these sayings, the people were astonished at his doctrine, for he taught them as one having authority, and not as the scribes.
Wow, okay. There it is.
The whole thing. And if we look at how that famous discourse concludes, they were astonished because of the uncompromising behavioral demand he had just laid out in that parable of the builders. The text makes doing the literal bedrock.
Right, hearing is insufficient.
Exactly. Hearing is insufficient, speaking is insufficient. It is the physical execution of the sayings that provides the structural integrity to survive the storm.
Well, look, your logic is totally sound regarding the insufficiency of speech, but I argue it completely collapses when you elevate observable action as the ultimate proof of that foundation.
How so?
You are looking at the house. I am asking you to look at the people claiming to live in it. Let's examine the terrifying warning just prior to that, in verses 21 through 23. We agree that speech fails, but look at what happens next. Many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in thy name, and in thy name have cast out devils, and in thy name done many wonderful works?
And his response is immediate rejection. Depart from me, ye that work iniquity.
Precisely. Now, analyze the psychology here. The most terrifying part of verse 22 isn't that they are lying to Jesus. It's that they actually believe their own resume.
Yeah, they really think they've earned it.
Right. How does a worker of iniquity successfully blind themselves to their own spiritual bankruptcy? By substituting a massive volume of outward action for an intimacy of relationship. They point to their actions, prophesying, casting out devils. If behavioral action were the supreme metric, these individuals would pass the test with flying colors.
Hold on, let me push back on that. You are equating two entirely different categories of behavior. You're treating all actions as equal, whereas the text carefully hierarchizes them. Look at the specific phrasing they use, done many wonderful works.
Okay.
The Greek word used there for wonderful works is dunamis, literally where we get the word dynamite. It means an explosive display of power. But Jesus isn't asking for dynamite. He defines the required action in verse 24. Heareth these sayings of mine, and doeth them.
But the workers of iniquity are still doing actions.
Yes, but what sayings are they supposed to be doing? The grueling, quiet, ethical teachings of the Sermon on the Mount. Turning the other cheek, loving your enemies, giving to the poor in secret. Those are consistent architectural actions. The workers of iniquity chose theatrical performance explosions of power over strict obedience to his specific commands.
I see the distinction you're drawing. But Jesus doesn't reject them by auditing their works. He doesn't say, you used dynamite when you should have used a hammer.
Well, he says they work iniquity.
True, but he shifts the paradigm entirely to relational ontology, meaning it's no longer about what you do, but the fundamental reality of who you are at a cellular level in relation to him. He says, I never knew you.
So you're saying the action is irrelevant?
Not irrelevant, but secondary. This brings us directly to his warning in verse 15. Beware of false prophets, which come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravening wolves. The entire danger is that their outward behavior, the sheep's clothing, is perfectly executed. It is indistinguishable from the real thing to the naked eye. Therefore, internal moral integrity must be the primary metric because outward religious works consistently fail to confirm it.
Okay, but if internal moral integrity is the primary metric, how on earth are we supposed to measure it? The text refuses to leave this in the realm of the invisible.
Well, by their fruits.
Exactly. Immediately after warning about the wolves in verse 15, Jesus establishes the evaluative mechanism in verse 16. Ye shall know them by their fruits. You cannot scan a tree's soul.
You have to look at the physical apples dropping to the ground. Fruit strictly and necessarily means observable physical action.
Ah, but you are making a critical biological error in your reading of the metaphor. You are equating fruit with manufactured works, and the text intentionally separates them.
Manufactured works?
Yeah, think about it like a plastic apple tied to a dead branch. It's an outward display, an action of the person who tied it there, but it is not fruit. Explosions of dunamos don't grow trees. Fruit is the organic, inevitable, biological result of the tree's inward reality.
I mean, I agree it has to be organic.
Right. And verse 18 establishes a rigid ontological law. A corrupt tree simply cannot bring forth good fruits. Therefore, the metric of fruit requires us to look past superficial actions to the deeper nature of the organism.
But how do you differentiate the plastic apple from the organic one without a behavioral metric? You have to observe its life cycle. A plastic apple won't rot, and crucially, it won't drop seeds that grow new trees.
That's fair.
True behavioral evaluation isn't just looking at a snapshot of the action, it's looking at the biological life cycle of that action over time. Does it reproduce? Does the ethical obedience commanded in the sayings manifest consistently?
Yes, but the terrifying reality that outward works can be faked, that wolves can wear sheep's clothing, and plastic apples can be tied to branches creates a massive pragmatic problem for the believer. If we can't easily trust outward actions, how are we supposed to navigate the social and spiritual ecosystem? How do we obey the command in verse 6?
You mean, give not that which is holy unto the dogs, neither cast ye your pearls before swine.
Exactly. To obey verse 6, you must identify who the dogs and swine are. But if outward works are deceptive, how do you judge? This forces us back to the very beginning of the chapter, verses 1 through 5.
The judge not passage.
Right. The text establishes a prerequisite for discernment. Judge not that ye be not judged. Notice the exact order of operations. Before you ever get to evaluate the receptivity of the swine in verse 6 or examine the fruits of the prophet in verse 16, the text demands rigorous, agonizing self-correction.
Casting the beam out of your own eye.
Precisely. The beam impairs vision. If your internal state is corrupt, if you are a bad tree, your judgment of who is a dog, who is a swine, and what is a good fruit is entirely compromised. You will mistake a wolf for a sheep because your internal moral compass is broken. Action, even the action of discernment, is completely downstream from internal purity.
I don't dispute that self-correction is necessary, but look at the teleology, the end goal of verse 5. And then shalt thou see clearly to cast out the mote out of their brother's eye.
Which is an action.
Yes.
The purification of the self is not a passive, mystical end in itself. It is the necessary preparation for engaging in the behavioral correction of the community. The physical action of casting out the brother's mote remains the objective. You purify the internal so that you can correctly execute the external.
But the internal dictates the reality of the external. This is why the middle section of this chapter is so crucial. If the whole point is just mechanical, behavioral execution, why does Jesus insert a profound discourse on the intimacy of the father-child relationship right after the warning about dogs and swine?
You're talking about verses 7 through 11. Ask, and it shall be given you.
Right. Or what man is there of you whom if his son ask bread, will he give him a stone? He is establishing God as a father, not an employer. The workers of iniquity in verse 22 treat God as an employer. Look at our resume of miracles, look at our output, pay us our wage of salvation.
That's a very compelling way to frame the dunamis, actually.
Exactly. But sons and daughters treat God as a father. They don't present a resume. They ask, seek, and knock. They rely on the nature of the father to give, quote-unquote, good things. This entire passage strips away performative works and replaces them with an intimate dependence on God. The foundation isn't what you do. It's trusting that the Father won't hand you a serpent when you ask for a fish.
Okay, but you are missing the immediate behavioral mandate that flows directly out of that intimacy. What is the very next word in the text? Verse 12 begins with therefore.
Okay, therefore all things whatsoever you would that men should do to you.
Yes!
Because the Father gives you good gifts, what is the required response? Therefore, all things whatsoever you would that men should do to you, do ye even so to them. The receipt of God's relational grace immediately, inexorably demands behavioral action toward others.
I'm not denying it demands action.
But you're downplaying it? The golden rule is not a state of being, it is an active outward mandate. It is the structural beam of the house on the rock.
But it is a beam that must be passed through a highly restrictive filter. The text immediately transitions into the straight gate in verses 13 and 14, because strait is the gate and narrow is the way, which leadeth unto life. The wide gate is the path of easy, performative religion. It's the path of crying, Lord, Lord, while your internal life remains a ravening wolf.
And you're saying the straight gate is inward?
Yes, the straight gate restricts. It strips away the excess baggage of performative works, the dynamite of public miracles, leaving only the bare internal reality of the soul before God.
I have to disagree fundamentally with that characterization of the straight gate. The narrow way is not narrow because it strips away works. It is narrow because it demands an agonizingly specific set of works.
Agonizingly specific?
Yeah. Doing the will of the Father, actually doing it, is incredibly difficult. It is much easier to cast out a devil in a moment of euphoric adrenaline than it is to consistently, quietly forgive an enemy day after day, year after year. The broad way is paved with good intentions and verbal professions. The narrow way is paved with the stones of daily obedient action. That is why few find it.
Let's pull these threads together. Because the tragedy exposed in Matthew 7 is the terrifying vulnerability of behavioral metrics. You can do everything visibly right. You can prophesy. You can perform miracles. You can wear the sheep's clothing perfectly and still be structurally hollow.
Like the house on the sand?
Exactly. The house built on the sand looked utterly identical to the house built on the rock, right up until the sky went dark and the rain started falling. The difference wasn't the outward walls. The difference was the unseen foundation hidden beneath the earth. A bad tree cannot be saved by tying good fruit to its branches.
Yet without the fruit, the tree is hewn down and cast into the fire. The foundation might be beneath the earth, but the text is explicit about what that foundation is made of. Heareth these sayings of mine, and doeth them.
Right.
The action is the rock. Without the doing, the house falls, and great is the fall of it.
This is the brilliance of the philosophical knot we find here. The doing is indeed the rock, but doing without the right internal relationship, without actually being known by the Father, makes you a worker of iniquity. It forces a complete synthesis.
Well, as we draw this analysis to a close, let me summarize the theological argument we've unpacked. Matthew 7 presents a reality where doing the Father's will, building the house upon the rock through the rigorous, consistent execution of his specific sayings, is the inescapable requirement for spiritual integrity. Action is the mechanism of obedience.
And from the philosophical perspective, because workers of iniquity are highly capable of performing wonderful outward works, external behavior is an easily manipulated variable. The true foundation of spiritual integrity lies in the relational ontology of the individual, being a good tree internally known by the Lord, from which organic, uncounterfeitable fruit naturally flows.
But where we find absolute, unshakable convergence today is on the total failure of sincere verbal belief as a standalone metric, crying Lord, Lord into the canyon without corresponding reality, whether you define that reality as obedient action or internal purity, leaves one entirely outside the kingdom.
Exactly. The text ruthlessly strips away the comfort of cheap speech. It forces us to examine our own architecture, continually weighing whether we are merely performing religious works on a foundation of sand or actually cultivating the deep biological roots of a good tree.
Which brings us back to the edge of the chasm, looking at that rope bridge. You can say you believe it will hold. You can analyze the wood, debate the tension of the ropes, or ponder the internal intention of the engineer. But eventually the storm comes, the winds blow, and the rain descends.
And it falls, or it doesn't.
And in that moment, the only thing that matters is what you have actually built and whether you have the integrity to step onto the wood. We want to thank you for joining us in this rigorous intellectual exercise today.
Please subscribe to the show and check out our other discussions as we continue to tear into the fascinating complexities of religious ethics and behavioral philosophy.
Thanks for listening.
Until next time, we leave you to look closely at your own architecture and ask yourself, what is holding up the house?